This is the Quo-Cast. My name's Jamie Durr. I'm here today with a tribute band via Skype. Well, a guy from a tribute band anyway. Gary Davies, not the radio presenter from the 1980s, but the lead, I believe, of Quo'd, who is with us right now on Skype. Can you tell us a little bit about Quo'd? How did it start?
Well, it started, I think, back in 2015. I'd been almost semi-retired from music, I guess, for a few years. A mate of mine had been looking on a local sort of join my band group and said, Davis, there's a Quo band here looking for someone to go and join them. It's got to be right up your street, isn't it? Because I've been talking about doing a Quo band with my brother on and off for a few years, and it sort of never quite got off the ground. We had a few rehearsals, but never sort of took it any further. And so I replied to the advert, strolled up to the rehearsal room a week or so later, and I met Mick and Chris there. So Mick plays the Rick Parfitt stuff. Although when we first started, actually Mick was doing all the lead work, and I was doing the rhythm. I don't quite know why that was, but it just was, you know. Chris was pretty much doing all the vocals, and we had drummer number one. I think his name was Paul, and it gets a bit confusing with drummers because we've had so many now. We kind of started it as a bit of fun, just to sort of see if we could kind of capture some of that sound and some of that energy of the early Quo stuff. And it sort of proved to be more difficult in a lot of ways than I think we'd anticipated. But we kept at it, and moved through a couple of different drummers, and we're now sort of, I think we're settled on this lineup, and it seems to be coming together in quite a nice way now. We've sort of reorganised a lot of the parts, and got people in the right places, standing in the right place on stage, doing more or less the right vocal parts and guitar parts each. Yeah, just trying to get that energetic kind of boogie sound down.
When you're compiling a set list, obviously with 50 years plus worth of material, how on earth do you choose? Do you go by what they've played live, or do you go on albums? How do you do it?
Well, we've done it a couple of different ways, and I think you've got to look at who the crowd are, right? I mean, I think Francis Rossi spoke about this over the years, and he's coming for a lot of criticism. Well, why don't you do this off that album? And can we have more stuff off of Dog or Two Head and Mark Kelly's and all that sort of stuff? His response has always been, yeah, but I've got a room full of casuals as well as hardcore Quo fans. So you've got to keep both of those lot happy. Now, for us at this level, we've got to be sort of mindful of who we're playing to. So when we first went out, we went, right, we're just going to be doing obscure stuff off a Pile Driver, and there's that one off a Quo that we're going to do. Yeah, brilliant. Of course, then we wonder why we're all getting off on it, and people in the audience are looking a bit baffled. It's because they're coming along and they're expecting to hear The Wanderer, Bridges, all of that kind of stuff. So I think we learned we learned pretty quickly actually that you need to look at who the audience are. So I think we've almost got to the point where we've got a 45-minute festival set which we dished out to the good folk of Brentwood on Sunday. We've got one that's slightly longer where we've got a bit more freedom. We chuck a few more of the sort of live set from the sort of the late 80s and early 90s in there that they'll go in. And we also got kind of our sort of 2-hour theatre set where it is, it's aimed at hardcore Quo fans. We'll dig into the Hello album. We'll do Quo'd, we'll do Reason for Living, that kind of thing. In fact, we did play all of Hello from beginning to end at the Quo Diamond Boogie Day earlier this year. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's a little sort of festival that Mike Grady puts on. And we sort of took the whole Hello album up there. And you can't do that at a festival, but in a room full of Quo fans, it goes down a storm. So putting a set list together can be pretty challenging, I'll be honest.
Well, yes, and I would imagine playing it from front to back, the Hello album, you would have had to have done 4,500 times. When you were doing that, are you doing as on the Hello album, or are you adding bits that were added later during the live years?
Well, yeah, we toyed with that. I thought, well, we could do the whole "Gotta Go Home," really me kind of ending, that you see on the live album, or I'm going to be controversial here, and it's Better Incarnation, which was on the Rock to Your Drop album. Whoops. But what we actually settled on was saying, well, what happens at the end of the Hello album? It fades out, so we can't do the fade out. It sounds like it goes up to a different key. But, at the end of the Hello album, most of us are going to go and put Quo on. So the first two tracks off of Quo is Backwater and Just Take Me. Now, it just so happens that they're in the same key. There is a slight tempo change. So we actually thought, what would Quo do? They would medley it, right? So we sort of kind of got most of the way through that sort of guitar solo till you get to the bit where it starts to get itchy and break down, and and then think, right, okay, we'll have a little drum and bass solo there, we're going to bring it down, and then we're just going to bring backwater in, and we've done that, and the place just erupted. It was just brilliant, so we've kind of gone from 4,500 times, we've done the album almost without introduction or saying anything, and then we rolled straight into that. And of course, the next one, which is in our set anyway, was Break the Rules. So we've kind of done all of LO and most of the first side of Quo. Unfortunately, by that time, we're almost out of time. I think we chucked in Wild Side Life and Paper Plane for that gig again, which we stuck the two things together. It's fun to play with, and I tend to think of a lot of Quo songs has been a bit like Lego blocks. A lot of them are in the same key. A lot of them have got the same feel, and they're mainly at the same tempo. So you can actually bolt them together in new and exciting ways, really. I love playing the medleys. We do the Roadhouse medley that Quo used to do in sort of like 90, 89, 90. That goes down well at a festival because most people know the Doors version of that. And provided you don't hang around too long with the jig and all the rest of it, you can get to the Wanderer pretty quick and then start jumping up and down again. So, great fun.
Well, I can imagine. I was going to ask you whether there was a track that you tried as a band that just didn't work.
We've played around with Army a little bit. Now, we don't have a keyboard player, so A, we can't afford the wages. And B, we just don't know a keyboard player, and I actually quite like the dynamic of it being, the two guitars. But we've mucked around with Army a little bit. It just don't quite hang together. I don't mind that. We did want to get it in the festival set because I think it fits quite nicely with whatever you want. I think Quo have done it in that order, so you finish whatever you want on that big sort of D minor chord. And then before you know where you are, you can ding, 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 ding. You can get into Army very, very easily. We just haven't quite cracked that one yet. There's a few we mucked around with off of On the Level, and again we haven't quite got things like I forgot the title of it now. But it starts with that sort of really long, widdly guitar solo.
Yeah, What to Do.
What to Do, that's it. I didn't know just what to do. We got the beat, but it just don't hang together. They're not all sort of straightforward tunes, really. But we'll persevere with them, and we'll get there. And I think once we're happy with them, then we'll try them out. But yeah, that question about Setlist is a good one because there is such a lot of it. We have to be mindful of the timing. We have to be also mindful of our physical capabilities. I sing a lot of the set, and by the end of it, I'm knackered. And people don't really want to hear vocalists that have lost their voice. You got to hand it to the guys. The real band when they were doing those sort of 2-hour flat out shows like I used to see at Wembley and places like that in the 90s. Incredible, absolutely incredible. And they're about my age. They were about my age now. Right, and I'm thinking that's physical fitness and stamina to have kept that up night after night on what used to be sort of 30, 40, 50 date tours. Incredible, absolutely incredible.
What was your first exposure to Quo?
Really early age. I got to name check my Uncle Steve on this. Really, really long story, really short. My dad was a very keen footballer, and sometimes his keenness led to him being a little bit naughty on the pitch. And I think the local league asked him not to come and play anymore in the local league because he got a bit naughty on the pitch. So he had to go and play somewhere else, and that involved going into, I think, East London somewhere. So he used to take me over to my nan's where my uncle lives, pick my uncle up, they'd both go to football, and I'd sort of wander off into Uncle Steve's room, and there'd be all these classic 70s albums from the sort of pop rock kind of genre. Right, there was The Sweet, there was Mud, there was that other bloke with the sideburns we shouldn't talk about, Slade, tons of Quo. And I remember just putting them on and just being sort of mesmerised. I'd have been about 4 or 5 years old, I suppose, just mesmerised by the label spinning around, particularly the Vertigo label, and I think that was side 1 of Pole Driver, which probably started with Don't Waste My Time. And the noise of it just coming out this old radiogram, it just got into you, really. I think after that, someone gave me a guitar, and I started thumping away on that. As I got a bit older, I've been learning music, I suppose, from about the age of 7. And another uncle of mine on my mum's side, he had an electric guitar, he had a Burns Trisonic. which I discovered under a spare bed round my other nan's, and I went, "Oh, what's that?" And dragged that out. And because I've been sort of, strumming away on the guitar with chords and whatever, I thought, well, that's what can we do with this? And before I knew where I was, I'm kind of picking out the riff to Caroline, blank, blank, blink, 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 blank. Eventually got it, drove everybody mad. But I think once that happened, it was game over really. And it's okay, where can I get a louder amp from? After I built one, that wasn't very good. What can I sell? Flog the piano, don't want that no more. Louder amps, better guitars. I really wanted a Telecaster, but ended up with a Strat, so I've had to scrape up some money to go and find a Telecaster. Oh, it's yellow, I wanted a green one, so strip the paint off it. And but by that time, I was sort of playing in school bands and sort of local unsigned scene, but never quite managed to scratch that Quo itch really. Kind of wasn't the sort of band that you could get away with in the sort of 90s indie rock scene. No one was kind of doing that kind of stuff, so it was with me all along, and actually if I listened to my playing from then, there was always little bits of Francis or Rick in the way I'd attack the guitar. I suppose it's only natural, it's got to come out at some point. So fast forward for all those years of being in unsigned originals bands and whatever, eventually I'll get to sort of try and be Francis on stage, and it's absolutely wonderful. I absolutely love it. I couldn't imagine life without doing it at the moment.
No, well, there is always something very uplifting about performing live, and certainly their music, because there's something about it. How hard did you find it learning the solos and things? Because even Francis these days sort of struggles with them.
I didn't find it particularly difficult, I have to be honest, but I think whilst most other kids of sort of 12, 13, 14 were probably out chasing girls, I was indoors locked away in a room chasing solos, and sort of unpicking them. I wore those records out that my uncle eventually gave me, and a few CDs too. So I didn't find it too difficult to learn them from the record. I'll tell you where it got difficult was when we did that thing in Quo'd where I said to Mick, right, or Mick said to me, actually, you take the solos. And then I couldn't remember where all the bits went, because it's almost like you listening for a cue in the record as to what comes next. So some of them can be sort of quite easy, roll over, lay down. There's a particular melody to that one. But once you get into things like some of the darker ends of 4500 times, Francis is just off on one really, and he generally would play the same thing. So what I end up doing is it's an assimilation of it. It'll be a bunch of Francis's licks, not necessarily in the right order. So yeah, I didn't find it too difficult, but I think I'm with a lot of Quo fans in that I find Francis a little bit frustrating to listen to. When he's sort of continually sodding about with what is actually a melodic part of the tune. Those huge bends that he does. And I think it kind of started in the 90s really. I was lucky enough to find the first gig I went to on one of the bootleg sites. And I listened to his Little Lady solo, and it's not quite as it is on the record, but by God, is it good. He sort of does this huge bend and then a massive boom slide down to the bottom bit. But these days, he just tends to mess around with it, and I think he kind of misses some of that excitement. So if you're listening, Francis, could you put it back to how it should be? Thank you.
The difference I found actually was when I saw the Frantic 4 tour, he seemed to be a little bit more paying attention to what it was like on the original record.
Yeah, I think you got a point there. I saw that. It was the last time I saw Quo. Was the Hammersmith 2013, and I wish I'd gone to the 2014 one. I really do, but
I know the feeling, because I went to Hammersmith 2013, one of the dates, and it was one of the best crowds I've ever seen. It was immense, and the recordings that exist of it, you can hear that crowd, and it really lifts everything.
There was definitely an emotion. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen Quo. It's not as many as some of the super fans that I've got to speak to through doing this, but I mean, it's plenty of times. I've not seen another band as often as seen Quo, but there was definitely something in the air that night. It was almost grown men crying, my God, John's on stage, Alan's on stage, and of course when Francis walked up to the mic and went, Alan Lancaster and John Cogburn, and the place just went berserk. I thought, well, I couldn't think, we were talking about it on the way, and we couldn't think of another classic rock band that could actually do that. So here's our original lineup. I don't think it would work with any of them, either for reasons of mortality or just reasons of they would probably kill each other being in the same room. And I think for Francis and Alan to have put aside what was clearly something quite a lot of animosity between them, to give that back to the fans, well, hands up to them. Fantastic.
Well, yes, and it's certainly one of the best gigs I've ever been to. It was absolutely amazing. I'm going to ask you, on the subject of gigs, have you got any coming up with Quo'd, or is it fairly quiet at the moment?
No, there's a few in the pipeline. We are at the Harold Hill Festival in Essex. It's near Romford. That, I think, is September the 7th, and we're on... I've got a feeling we're either top of the bill or just before. Hopefully we're just before, because that means if we are just before, we can pack up and leg it and try and hop over the fence at Chelmsford, where Quo are also playing in Chelmsford. So there's that one coming up. We're at Witham Town Hall in November. I think that's also November the 7th. Again, these dates are on our Facebook page. Where else are we after that? Walton on the Naze in December, and then there is talk next year of going a little bit further afield. So we're doing some work now with a sort of production promotion company that are looking to start booking us into some smaller sort of venues like sort of theatres and big clubs, and we could try and get out of Essex, really, which will be great fun. Hopefully we will also return to the Quo Diamond Day next year. I mean, that was a fantastic day out. If you've ever been to it, you'll know what it's all about. If you haven't, get down there. I mean, it's fabulous. That's in Mansfield. I don't know if there's dates or whether Mike's confirmed it yet, but we're fingers crossed that we'll go back there next year.
Have you met any of the other Quo tributes that are out there and sort of swap notes?
I've met Woody from Quo Experience. We did a gig, it would have been October last year, I think, and it was just before we kind of got our current drummer in. So our old drummer, I think that was more or less his last appearance with us, but I sort of spotted him at the back. I thought, I recognise him, and we get chatting before the gig, and I must admit I was a bit starstruck, really, because he's got his phone out. He's gone, oh yeah, here's me and Francis, and here's Francis's actual guitar, and I'm like, oh my god, just stop dribbling, Oh, that's Francis's amplifier and his settings. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, how do you know all that kind of stuff? So I know that Woody did a bit of roadieing work with them, and I've got a couple of the other guys that are sort of I'm friends with on Facebook, but I've never actually met or really spoke to them. But one of these days I'm looking forward to getting out and seeing Quo Experience, and I think Counterfeit Quo are from around here, and there's another one, I can't remember which version it is. They're up in Colchester somewhere. There's actually quite a few of us about, I think there are loads of Quo tributes. I've seen one or two myself, but yours is Quo'd. If people wanted to find out more about you, where would they need to go? We do have a website, but to be honest, I think what with social media and all that, probably the best place to learn more about Quo is at Facebook. It's facebook.com/Status Quo'd. That's Quo with a D. All our sort of gig dates and whatever you're on there. There's pictures. There's a few little odds and sods of video as well, which you can have a listen to and see what we sound like. I think we sound pretty good, to be honest. Well, I'm sure many fans will be the judge of that. Thanks so much for coming on the Quo-Cast on this edition. You're welcome. Great talking to you.